Tea in the morning, tea in the evening, tea at supper time. You get tea when it's snowing, tea when it's raining, tea when the weather is fine. You get tea as a midday stimulant. You get tea with your afternoon tea. For any old ailment or disease, for Christ's sake, have a cup of tea. I would love to say that's something brilliant that Vandal Drummond wrote, but alas, it was written by the Kinks on their great album, Muswell Hillbillies, and I only sing it because I am drinking a mug of hot, hot tea in the cool green mug that the awesome Ay Mamacita Pagano got me for Christmas, and it's a very hot day. I'm one of the few people I know who will drink hot tea on a hot day.
Yeah, or a hot coffee.
That's right. I have to have something hot, even in hot weather.
Yeah.
Greetings. This is Vandal Drummond, and as always, Fredo Esparza. How you doing, Fredo?
I'm doing good.
Very cool.
You know,
there's so much.
Something I heard earlier today. Ricky Ataki on Figure Four. What was Figure Four?
Yes.
Yeah.
I recommend everybody who is a member of the Figure Four Empire to download the Ricky Ataki interview. It'll be a great retro look at Southern California pro wrestling, both indie and WWE TV tapings. I guess I should say WWF in reference to the time frame.
You might
I'm sorry?
You might get sued by the Wildlife Foundation.
That's right. The Wildlife Fund might come after my ass. They might think I'm the second coming of Vince. Well, maybe the insanity, but not the brilliance, and not the lavish lifestyle. Yes, well, I recommend everybody check that podcast out. Ricky is one of the most laid-back guys you'll ever hear. Even a bit shy at times on this interview, but has a lot of great anecdotes.
Yeah, he's shy. He's a wrestling fan. What a shock.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, it's kind of amazing because when you first meet wrestlers, you think, oh, these guys are going to be all loud and, you know, pretty much kind of like what you are, Kurt. But they're all pretty quiet.
Yes.
They're all really quiet. You know, you're
and hockey is probably the most extreme example of that too. In fact, there's at one point in the show where he mentions that Ricky Ataki makes a lot of the pro wrestling guerrilla shows, but you know, people who know of him don't see him at the shows, and that's kind of like he's very content standing in the shadows and not making himself known.
Yeah, that's so funny. But I think people know him, but they don't really want to talk to him or something.
Yeah, I don't see why. He's one of the nicest people you'd ever meet.
You know what I mean? Like he doesn't really go out of his way to, because you know, some people, if you don't like make it seem like you're really going to talk to them, they won't approach you.
Yeah. Well, and he is like that. He is very content not being recognized. It's funny because he's one of the best-liked people at Cauliflower Alley. The funniest thing is every time I've gone there with him, he comes for his name badge, and there's the name badge for Ricky Ataki, and he'll say, I keep telling them Lauren Miyake. I'm Lauren Miyake. And I said, sorry, you can't surrender the name now. You are Ricky Ataki. And further proof, Ricky Ataki on Figure 4 Empire. Download it, folks. It's well worth the listen.
Yeah,
he has awesome stories about everybody from Wildman Jack Armstrong, who I frequently mention on this show, and I just mentioned again, and a short-lived jobber named Mark Ming, who...
I remember that guy.
He was around very briefly, but it's funny because I was so surprised to hear Brian bring up Mark Ming on that show because both on the way up to Cauliflower Alley this year and the way back...
Or now muted.
I think I hear a Bix.
I think I was talking to somebody else.
Oh, dear.
He got on the line.
I was testing to see if you could hear me while it was saying you are now unmuted.
Yeah, we could hear you then.
That's the answer.
Yes. And so, yeah, Mark Ming was a jobber who was around for a really brief time, just a matter of a few months, and also wrestled under the name of Houdini. Don't quite get that one, where he got the Houdini
Did he wear a mask?
I mean, I know where he got it from, but I don't know why he called himself Houdini.
Did he wear a mask, or was it just Houdini?
No. Oh. No.
He wasn't the Houdini of wrestling like Johnny Eagles.
Oh my God! You remember that? Johnny Eagles, the Houdini of wrestling. Now, folks, going right into 1970s Los Angeles nostalgia, without any delay. Johnny Eagles came in to the LA territory in his senior years, and they called him the Houdini of wrestling. His gimmick being that somebody would get him in a hold, any hold, and he would magically escape from it, leaving the person looking perplexed. Like, how did he get out of my brilliant move?
and
I gotta ask you,
well, I was going to say, just for those who aren't aware, he was a British wrestler, Johnny Saint type.
Yes.
So anyway,
and I actually got to see him live a few times when I lived up in Oregon.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, you were saying something, though.
Well, I was about to ask you, where did you hear about the Houdini of wrestling with John in relation to Johnny Eagles? Was that something he did outside of L.A.?
From Gulf Coast. There were just a couple tapes of Gulf Coast stuff, and one of them has a tag match with him doing as the Houdini of wrestling. And it's really good.
Yeah. No, he was a good worker, and he went to L.A. when there weren't too many good workers. He came in shortly before it had its last good wave, shortly before Alan Coage came in, the Gibson brothers. Had Bull Ramos come in yet? I don't think Bull Ramos was there yet. But he came and went, got one of those lovely LaBelle Pay checks, and I guess decided to say, the Northwest is where I belong.
I love, though, that in Tennessee, that he was Eddie and Tommy Marlin's British cousin, Johnny Marlin.
I never heard about that. That is awesome. And how long did that happen?
He was there for a while, I think. It's so weird to picture that, you're in Tennessee, you have the brother tag team, and here's their British cousin. Not an identical British cousin.
I love it. What do you know? We have a cousin from jolly old England.
They walk alike, they talk alike.
Because they're cousins. Identical cousins from across the seas. Well, the fascinating thing about this week is there is so much to talk about, but I think both Fredo and I have watched very little. I want to thank you, Vic,
for not a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I guess there isn't.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, if we didn't watch
it, it's been 3 weeks, so we do have something to talk about. There's definitely one big thing to talk. Well, it's been 3 weeks, so there's at least one big thing to talk about. Although I don't know if you guys saw it.
Yes, and that was the Friday before last. Deep Purple played at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles. It was so awesome. Open air concert. Ian Gillan on the vocals. He started out with Highway Star, and at first he wasn't really hitting the notes on Highway Star, and I was totally bummed because that was my favorite song, and I thought, oh, damn, this concert's going to blow. And right into the second song, all the rust is gone, and he's belting out in only the way that Ian Gillan can. He even sung some of their lesser-known songs, like When a Blind Man Cries, and it was totally cool. There were all these 50-something people, everybody lighting up, Sparking the Owl, and, a lot of 50-something cougars who looked like they were these hot metal chicks 20 years ago, grandparents with their grandchildren. It was so cool. It was the most awesome concert. So that's one pretty awesome thing that happened in the last couple of weeks. Their guitarist, Stephen Morse, was a replacement for Richie Blackmore. And it was really cool because he wasn't trying to just be Richie Blackmore. He's doing his own thing, and it still got over they got over like crazy. And, dude, the opening band was this band called Ernie and the Automatics.
Uh-huh.
Had two of the original members of Boston.
Oh, wow.
And so they did a whole bunch of original tunes, but they finished off their set with a whole medley of Boston tunes, everything from Smoke In, and all those. Oh, it was awesome.
I think now we know what's in your iPod.
Oh, Deep Purple all the way.
All these 1970s bands.
Yeah, everything from their late 60s singles, from when Rod Evans was the singer, to the Perfect Strangers album, including Knocking at Your Back Door. Gillan piped out that one, too. It was a totally bitchin' concert.
I think Bix was talking about the CM Punk thing.
Well, I was also going to say, though, actually, wasn't the last show before Triple Mania and Lucio Final?
Yeah, I think it was. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was.
It's already like old news now.
I know.
That's right.
Last
time we were on the air, I think I was at the beach.
Yeah,
you were.
Yeah, and the last time, I think I said Averno was going to be in WWE pretty soon, and he's still in CMLL.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, we thought he'd be gone after a week.
Yeah. Everybody thought he was going to be gone by the following week, and he's still there.
It's so funny, Bix.
What happened?
Do I hear another voice on there somewhere?
I don't know. Do we?
Oh, maybe we have
Dan
some feedback.
Ryan Doyle?
No, it's just us three right now.
Oh, there must be a ghost on the line. Now, that would be cool. We could get on, like, coast to coast, even though Art Bell's not on it anymore. If there was a ghost on a podcast, I don't think that's been done yet.
I think Brian.
But anyway, Bix, when you IM'd me the night when CM Punk did his first rant, when you IM'd me, the first thing I thought is, oh, I wonder if Averno's going to pop up. And then as I was watching the show, or actually, as I should say, I DVR'd it, and then as I fast-forwarded through the show, I thought, nah, they wouldn't open up with, they wouldn't end a show with Averno making his debut. So I said, what the hell are they doing? And then CM Punk did that promo from heaven. It was awesome. And I love, even when he got fans chanting his name, how he just, totally dissed them just to get more heat. That was an awesome, awesome promo. Although I'm sure everybody has said what I've just said now, and probably a lot more articulately, too.
Probably.
Now, I did not see the famous follow-up promo. What was the story behind that?
Well, there wasn't a follow-up promo.
Okay, yeah.
Are you talking about the thing in Australia? That wasn't really.
I'm talking about when he went on the rant against what he called the homos.
Oh no! That's not what happened. He didn't go on a rant against the homos. At one of the Australian house shows, he was being heckled by fans who were saying stuff like CM Punk sucks dick and calling him faggot and stuff. So he, as part of a rant, he did called one of the guys a homo and ended up apologizing for it. Although, and hopefully it'll be water under the bridge, because really what it should be remembered for is that the heckler says that Punk only picks on women. So Punk then says, well, that must be why I'm picking on you then. You have a vagina.
Oh, Lord.
So, yes, I hope that becomes the legacy of that and not homos.
Yes.
He did not go on a rant about the homos or the blacks.
Yeah, it was a house show. It wasn't
or the Jews.
Or any other group he might offend.
Might have offended the Mormons, though.
Oh.
I know that somebody who is family with Mormon.
That's right.
Ryan Doyle, the Mormon Giant.
Oh, hello, everybody.
Or should I say, the Giant who has family members who are Mormon. I'm not sure. Are you Mormon, or is it just family members?
The family members are. I used to be, but I started asking questions about this, that, and whatnot, and the Mormons didn't like it, so they gave me the boot.
You just wanted to stop wearing the garments, didn't you?
I couldn't wear the Mormon underwear. It was too much.
Ryan Doyle, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I was just listening to you guys talk about CM Punk, and I was really excited to be able to talk to you guys about it, because I'm just wondering, if any of you actually really thought that was a complete shoot.
Complete shoot in what way?
Well,
a complete
did
shoot?
you really think? Did anybody really think that that was completely unscripted and that nobody knew that he was going to do that? I mean,
they would have cut his mic a lot sooner, I think.
Exactly.
I think they planned out that he was going to do a shoot promo, but I think it's possible that he, went over the basics with them and, the cues of when to cut to which camera. But I think it's possible that at least he largely ad-libbed the content.
Yeah, but having worked for years in radio and as a board op, your instinct, if you hear anything that's even remotely wrong, is to immediately shut everything down.
Well, I mean, Kevin Dunn would have been in on it.
Yeah.
You have to remember he's the one in charge of all that.
Yeah.
And he's the number 2 guy, so if he's in on it.
But I'm reading a lot of things on sites and whatnot, and there are a surprising number of people who actually think that was a complete shoot and that he just went on his own, and I'm amazed that people actually think that. It was an awesome interview. Don't get me wrong. It was an awesome promo. One of the best I've seen in a long time. But
it's the best I've seen in years. I mean,
yeah.
One of the things that I've seen on a number of indie shows is there'll be a heel who's doing mic work and he's getting pretty decent heat, but then he gets people heckling him, and he'll say something to diss the heckler, something clever, and then all those fans who were booing him start cheering him because he was funny and clever. And I love when CM Punk had fans on his side cheering him. He just told them to stuff it.
Yeah, and he turned it around on them and said, "You people are just as bad as everyone else wasn't cheering."
Yes. It was great because I see so many heels who want to be cool. They want to be suave heels. They don't want to get real heat, or they're I don't know. Maybe they just don't know how to get real heat.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah. I was at a recent indie show where one of the people in the dressing room, who was a heel, says, "Yeah, they cheer me a lot. I think fans just like to cheer heels." And I said, "Well, you weren't exactly doing much to piss them off, to be honest with you. You're just doing the a lot of the heels do the usual thing. They walk to the ring with their hands in the air like worship me. They stand on the second turnbuckle like every other wrestler does."
I know who you're talking about, Kurt.
Yes.
I know who you're talking about. I'm going to break it later tonight.
Behave yourself, Fredo. Behave yourself, Alfredo.
Is this a new play R?
Oh, wait.
Alfredo is
I think Dan's going to be on the line. We better stop talking about local talent.
Alfredo is turning Jimmy Hart on me.
Hey, Kurt, we better stop talking about local talent because Dan's going to be on the line right now.
Ixnay, and Day Aronfay is on the line.
Yeah, last thing we need is Dan getting mad at us.
Boy,
what do you want a
sure.
racehorse break this like?
Fredo's getting really good at recognizing numbers now, aren't you?
Oh, no, it says what part of the country you're at.
Oh, well, exactly. So I imagine you guys are talking about this horrible situation where the SmackDown guys were in South Africa and they got their bags broken into, right?
That was
true.
Yeah,
we haven't even touched on that one yet.
The thing that's funny to me about it is of all those different times those guys are taking craps in each other's bags, this is the one time they should have done it and they didn't do it.
I'll show them.
Farron, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine. I heard the name of Jimmy Hart brought up. What strange esoteric trip are you on this evening, sir?
If Fredo started it. Fredo was pranking me. And that's why I told him he's going Jimmy Hart on me.
Oh, okay.
First bringing out stuff that he shouldn't be talking about on a podcast.
Oh, God.
Are their initials DJ as in something dark in a wonderful journey?
Oh dear.
She lives out here.
No. If you catch the old kayfabe memory boards, they all insist she's living in Florida.
Oh, well, maybe she moved. Maybe she moved after the show we did a couple of weeks ago.
That board still exists?
But does it say that she's actually living? like alive. Is she actually?
Yeah. Well, you know what I do have to do now, since it won't die. I'm gonna have to Google and find those old posts, just so people know that they actually happened. That people did believe at one time.
Why don't you track her down and have her on the show?
Oh, that would be wonderful. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. Better yet, I'll get Eric Caden on the show and have him tell the whole story. That would be even better. And I think it would draw just as many viewers or listeners. No, Dan, we were talking about what bitchin' heat CM Punk got.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about how he dissed the fans who were cheering for him in the arena.
Yes.
And how a lot of people today don't get that. And I was saying, the reason I say Fredo was pulling a Jimmy Hart on me is I said I was in the dressing room at a recent show, and there was a wrestler who said, oh, they cheer me. I guess they just like to cheer the heels. And I was sitting there thinking, no, it's because you're not acting like a heel. You get in there and you put your hands out in the air like worship me, like all heels do, and you act a little cocky like heels do, but you still want the people to love you.
Well, see, that's always has been one of the problems, and it's something that kind of goes back to the 90s with the NWO, and that is the whole idea of being a cool heel. And the thing is that a cool heel really doesn't really work in the long run. And the fact is the heel should be cowardly, the heel should be a bully, he should be a lot of things, but he should never be cooler than the babyface.
Yeah, and he should be pissing some people off.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of guys, just in general, they don't want to do that. For some reason they think that they would rather be Kevin Nash. I have no idea why, but they think they should be Kevin Nash. Yeah.
Well, they have two fantasies. They want to be pro wrestlers, and they want to be Lippy the Lion, the cartoon character.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's an old reference. Wow.
Yeah, I know. That's going back before almost all of our times. Almost before our time, Dan.
So yeah, but no, you're absolutely right, though, about that. I mean, it's just, again, it's one of those things, and I think a lot of guys... And I think it probably is, it's one of those things where a lot of guys, that's all they've been raised on. They weren't used to seeing heels that backed away or did all that other kind of stuff. So, it's like they really don't have anything to draw from.
True, and the people who are teaching them these days probably are younger folks. Because
yeah.
I think more now than ever, younger people are teaching people to wrestle. People who don't quite have as much road experience.
Yeah.
You know what this discussion is making me think about? How many of you have the Midnight Express scrapbook?
I do.
I have it.
Okay. You know the chapter near the beginning about heat?
Yeah.
And this is it's really fascinating. Cornette explaining, how you don't have real heat anymore, and really specific stories and all that about just how how it was really until I guess you could say until Smoky Mountain and Memphis closed up. But really,
the thing with heat is I think if anybody drew really heavy heel heat these days, they'd be scared to death.
This is true
because they wouldn't know what to do with it. I think probably the only place where you could probably find even just a little bit of that anymore would be in Mexico. But in most cases, they're not even that, not that heavy heel heat into that anymore.
Well, I've always been confused about how it is in Mexico, because you always hear the stories about you always hear about, just how passionate and, how the fans are and how much heat the heels will get. But you also hear a lot of the times about how they're still fully aware that it's a show. More so than you sort of expect your stereotypical, for lack of a better comparison, Southern fan who's going to attack the heels too, to be necessarily knowing as much that it's a show.
Kurt, did you
remember? Well, I remember even in L.A. days, or when I'd go to matches promoted by Antone the Ripper Leone up in Bakersfield. People like the Kelly twins would get awesome heat from people, but you'd hear the people talking, later, even after they've been all heated up, like, they wouldn't say it this formally, but they're saying, I wonder what the finish is going to be tonight, or I wonder how they're going to end this match tonight. But they'd still get pissed off or really elated if the baby faces went over.
Yeah, I think that's also, I remember the same thing, too, because if you read any of the old result sheets or whatever from the Olympic Auditorium, a riot breaking out seemed to be just like the normal thing. If it wasn't a successful card if a riot didn't break out. And I know that when I used to go to the San Bernardino Arena and I saw Oliver Humperdinck whip the people into, and J.C. Dykes, too, into where they were surrounding the ring, pounding on the mat and whatever. And I think I would say with that, it was almost like going to see a really good movie. I remember going to see with my father Tora, Tora, Tora in the theaters.
Oh, yeah.
And when, when at one point one of the sailors was able to jump up and shot down one of the planes, everybody cheered. And I think it's one of those things where if you get any kind of audience in the right position and present something they want to see, they get excited about it. And afterwards, they're like, wow, that was fun. I really had a great time. I enjoyed that. What I noticed about Mexico is that when we used to go down there to Tijuana in the 90s, Kurt, the early 90s, it was very different. First of all, I know the audience was very happy to see us there. They were kind of like, oh, wow, you guys came all the way down from California to see this, to see our wrestling. And it was very traditional. They were there to cheer for their favorites and to boo the villains. And I think a little by little, and this may have been kind of like when a lot of the guys, the Lucha guys would come up here and then go back to Mexico and take some of the extreme stuff with them. They were able to whip the younger crowds up into a real frenzy. But as you know, Kurt, from the stuff that we saw, anytime you did anything, because Mexico is a very proud nation down there, and anytime you brought in, you could bring in the Nazis and masked Russians and all that stuff up here, and in many cases the guys knew that the fans knew that they weren't really Russians or Nazis or whatever they claimed to be. But down there, it was really easy to, if you were, a gringo, to start a riot. Very, very easy to do it. And, you remember, Kurt, we went to those first couple AAA shows. That was probably some of the most dangerous heat I ever remember sitting through.
That was amazing. The heat that Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr got was unlike any I had seen. I think Jake Roberts got probably the most heat I'd ever seen him get when he was doing that stuff with Conan.
Well, Kurt,
Easily.
I was going to ask you, as you started talking about this, though, would you actually say that was more heated in terms of the environment than the Ole turning on Dusty?
I would say yes.
I would say this was more. I would say the emotion was just as high, but the fans in LA, I think, wanted to kill Jake Roberts and the Gringos Locos.
And one of the problems
people were enraged at what happened to Dusty, but they weren't about to tear the arena down.
Yeah, and also what happened was the sports arena had oversold the building. So everything was jammed in, squeezed in anyway. And, all it took was Jake Roberts and Diamond Dallas Page slamming little Masquerita Sagrada into the cage. And they went nuts. But I had never seen, I've been to shows. We all have been to shows, at least in the old days. And I think someone was remarking about how fans don't throw anything anymore. How they used to throw things into the ring. Very, very rarely do you ever see that happen anymore. But it was, at that show, they almost had to sweep the ring out after every match because, the things that were flying down there, it was just unbelievable. And you felt this current in the crowd at one point. And I remember looking over and Mike Tenay was there. Now, Mike Tenay had gone through riots in Mexico, at the Olympic Auditorium or whatever, and he looked worried.
So he's prepared for TNA now, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a different kind of pain on Mike's face now. But
that's beating me to that show.
Yeah, that was, you remember, Kurt, because we actually went out to eat after the show and wound up, Page and Roberts came into the same came into the same place where we were and talked to Ron Skoler. And Roberts was yelling at him, "You better have us some protection tomorrow night. You better have us some protection tomorrow night."
Yes,
so
I
even
remember
they
that.
knew what it was. So I would say probably, Bix, I would say if I had to put it on par to anything, I would say when Paulie Dangerously and Austin Idol and Tommy Rich had to get out of the cage after cutting Lawler's hair, but double it.
Wow.
That's what it was like that night.
Yeah, and I also have to say that the very first night that AAA appeared in Los Angeles, they had a surprise appearance by Perro Aguayo. He didn't wrestle on the show. He
That's
just
true.
came out and walked around the ring a few times. And I was sitting in the front row. Hey, is my phone like really staticky?
No.
I feel like every time.
No, I think what you're hearing is I'm opening a window out here. That's what you're hearing.
Okay,
I'm pushing the
gotcha.
blinds back.
Anyways,
It's hot in LA for us to be doing a podcast.
it is hot. But anyways, I was in the front row with Ron Skoler and his wife, and out of nowhere they announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, Perro Aguayo." And as he's walking out the ring, people are just going to reach out just to touch him.
Mm-hmm.
And people like in the fourth row are walking over people in the third and second rows just so they could just high-five Perro Aguayo. And this just big doofus starts climbing over Ron Skoler's wife, and I literally had to shove him over so he wouldn't squish her.
Oh, I don't believe that. No.
No, that's about the only time I ever really shoved somebody at a wrestling show, other than when I was actually wrestling myself.
Yeah, I mean, the heat was really, really, really heavy there at the sports arena for all those AAA shows until Vandal Drummond wrestled on it. After that, there was never heat in that building ever again.
That's when the heat died.
That's when the day the heat died. That's what they called it. So.
That's right. And they started advertising on every show, "That pathetic gringo is not appearing tonight. Please come. Tickets are discount."
So then I take it then that the heat that Hogan drew when he turned NWO is definitely a different kind of heat. I guess a more subdued heat than.
Yeah, my feeling about that heat when I just watched it, rewatched it. I mentioned last time with the Monday Nitro DVD. I get the impression still when I watch that one that a couple people threw something into the ring, and then everybody thought, "Oh, this looks like that would be fun. Let's do the same thing." I still contend that people didn't throw stuff in the ring during that time period because they were upset or whatever. I think it was just one of those things where, one guy at ECW throws a chair in the ring, then everybody follows.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's my contention there. Plus, also, they, like anybody else, they thought, "Oh, this would be fun to hit Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan in the head, or watch Gene run for dear life." That was the other one.
Well, and the iconic angle that really got the NWO going. I mean, you could argue at least that one had legit, heat because with Hogan turning heel in Florida.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But and then it was seen, so visible that then made it a trend.
Yeah, I think it's just something. It became something like a Rocky Horror Picture Show thing. It's like the NWO's in the ring. Let's throw stuff at them.
Yeah, and they kind of got carried away with all that stuff.
Yeah,
and they chant along like with the Steve Austin. He had the what,
That whole what thing is annoying.
Yeah,
I thought that thing would be long dead by
10
now.
years.
It's amazing the lifespan on that thing. That is absolutely amazing. Yeah, but you're talking about heat. It's interesting. Bix, you said the Gary Hart book, right?
Yeah.
Did you say yeah? And I just got it about 2 weeks ago, and I've been devouring it. Almost done with it now. The thing that's really great about it is, oftentimes, and I know of Gary Hart's career, but not that closely. He had some wonderful people doing research because of the stuff he pulls up. But, as with any wrestling book, I always have a tendency to take some of the stuff with a grain of salt. But there's a lot of really nice stuff you can learn about the territories in the old days in there. And Hart talks a lot about building people up and what he had to do and how he would, tell Brody to do this and switch around, how like in Texas, there had to be in the undercard, there had to be clean finishes.
No brawling
nobody
outside the ring.
No brawling outside the ring. Yeah, that whole stuff.
And then everyone complained because he let Brody do it, and they said, why can Brody do it then? Because it's Brody's gimmick.
Yeah, exactly. And it was very interesting because again, they talk about heat that doesn't exist anymore. And that's the first thing I thought when I listened to the Punk thing, and he did that really nice little thing about, you guys are cheering me, don't cheer for me because you're just as much, if not more, responsible for this stuff. Was really a nice thing to do. And I read someplace today that with the pay-per-view, they were just going to kind of let it roll. They weren't going to they were going to try to send Punk out to run down his hometown beforehand or whatever. They were just going to go with whatever it is, which I think is a good idea, because I think right now in some places it's going to be virtually impossible for Punk to get over as a heel.
Well, I think even if he does a promo, with it being his last night, I don't even think that the fans would turn on him.
No, I think also just because of the way the fans are now, that they would expect them to, and it's kind of like whenever you see somebody go on and go on TV and they're in some place and they'll wear a jersey of an arch rival team or whatever. People usually they boo it, but they laugh. You can hear them laughing at the same time because they know what it is. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like every time. Every freaking time Billy Jack came to Los Angeles, he would always go in wearing a Raiders jersey. And I remember the guy in front of me sitting there going, God, what a kiss-ass that guy is. It's like sometimes you do too much. And, while it may have worked in some places and sometimes, and I think if you're in places like Oklahoma or other things like that, with college football and stuff like that, you can get it over. But in most cases, I think the audiences are smart enough to realize what they're trying to do. And if they do a good job, the reaction you heard when he did that was everybody went, ooh, and that was more like, hey, good one, more than, oh, you made me mad.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's almost like like Jerry Springer, like, oh, what's he gonna say? What's he gonna say? He dissed him. And,
yeah. I had a friend who was actually on the Jerry Springer show. She was hired to play a certain character because most of the people on those shows are actually, like actors.
And
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a friend of mine who was on the show twice as two different people.
Yeah, I mean they said, do you want to be in love with another school teacher, or do you want to be the woman that the man left another man for? That kind of stuff. Yeah, and that's what they always do. So that's why they have that show is absolutely amazing to me. Just because that's the only show in the world where, and you see those censored or uncensored DVDs where, the crowd starts chanting "Wrestle naked," and the women wrestle naked on a TV show.
Springer Girls Gone Wild.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing that Jamie Dundee said in his shoot interview, and since it's Jamie Dundee, I have no idea if it's true, but he did appear on Springer a number of times, and he apparently had some kind of booking role, for lack of a better term. He said that all of the stories are real stories, and they actually shoot a bunch of episodes. They try to shoot episodes with real people when they can, but they're so unwatchably bad that they then use the wrestlers and actors to use the real stories.
Yeah. Because didn't Mickey James do one of those, or was that another one? That was a different show, I think, actually.
Mickey James, I don't think was on. Oh, no, Mickey James was on like a Jenny Jones or something.
That's what it was.
I was a gawky teenager, now I'm hot.
Now I'm hot or whatever, yeah.
And
but
about 10 years ago, one of the, I can't remember his name, but one of the sheet writers or something appeared on one of the shows, and he had a toupee on, and what was that?
Brian Alvarez.
Well, has a toupee.
You are now no longer a great man. You've been reduced. You've been demoted.
Well, there's that other Brian Alvarez.
There's a second Brian Alvarez, kind of like
the one
in the Bowflex commercial.
Yeah, the commercials for Bowflex.
Oh, I thought you meant like they were Twin Devils. There was another Twin Devil, another Brian Alvarez who.
Well, that's his brother, Brian Alvarez.
Who sneaks out, and the other Brian Alvarez goes on the mic and punks everybody. There's a good Brian Alvarez and a bad Brian Alvarez. A good man and a great man.
But before he goes on the mic, they grab each other and spin around a lot, and then someone says,
I always thought it'd be funny if you had two guys that looked absolutely not alike at all, and they would do that. And like one had red hair, one had no hair, and the ref go, "That's not working. Get out of the ring."
That's right.
You mean Johnny Legend never tried that?
I would say, and the Johnny Legend would have to have a referee who's still confused. Like, hey, which one of you is which? I don't quite get this. Have one like giant Baba size, the other Masquerita Dorada size, Oh, well, yeah. Actually, Ryan and I were texting back and forth earlier, and we have a question to pose to everybody.
All of you.
If you could be any jobber in wrestling history, who would you be?
Put on your thinking caps.
Okay, I'm going to say.
It has to be a true job.
No. Okay, Joel Deaton in Crockett because he got to date Dark Journey.
No way. I never heard that.
Boy, this show is just revolving around Dark Journey.
That's a great... Well, then I have to go next because my answer is along the same lines and I've already mentioned on this show, and I probably have on every other show of Slammin' Stan, I would be, for similar reasons, Wildman Jack Armstrong.
Baby doll? No.
I wouldn't have mind cuddling up to Baby Doll at all. I'd like to be Wildman Jack Armstrong because he jobbed every night on Channel 13, but he got more girls than all the other wrestlers combined.
And he got to be on the Joe Franklin show.
He got to be on Joe Franklin? No way.
I've told you this a million times. His brother is Richie Ornstein, the co-host, sidekick guy, on Joe Franklin. So he got to be on Joe Franklin. I know
Well, you probably told me. You probably told me when I was sober. I'm not going to remember something like that.
You'll have to tell him next week too, Dick.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay, then all for me, Bix. Tell me the story that I already know. Because I have to hear this. I have to cement it into my mind.
Armstrong is the brother, Lenny Ornstein's
sidekick.
Brother is Richie Ornstein from the Joe Franklin show.
And so his appearance as Wildman Jack Armstrong?
Yes. He was not Richie Ornstein's brother. No, he was not. Here's Richie's brother, who might be a pro wrestler. He was Wildman Jack Armstrong.
Kurt, that was probably during the time that you were heavily medicated. Which I think was from around 1980 to around 2003.
Which medication are you talking with?
It was it was something that Dr. Bernhard Swartz gave you. I have no idea what it was. But...
That was one of the top 5 moments of my career.
Well, did you watch Joe Franklin at a lot at all?
Well, that was the East Coast show, right?
Well, yeah, but it ran out here.
Believe it or not, the only time I ever saw it was when I was like 18 and I was staying in New York for a few weeks.
Because it was on WOR, wasn't it, Bix?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I remember seeing it.
Yeah, so you would have gotten.
Yeah, I never caught it out here, but what I remember is the night I caught him was I was staying in a Y in Manhattan, and I'll never forget the room was this tiny little room, but they had this big ass TV in it that was almost as big as the room itself. And so you turn off the lights and you turn on the TV and you're just bathed in this multicolored light. And Joe Franklin's on and he's interviewing some woman, who's trying to promote S&M as, a way for people to, get along, peacefully and in harmony with each other. And having it be 1980, being 1980, I thought, this is radical shit, man. This is so cool. But that's all I know about Joel Franklin. But now I know the coolest thing, thanks to the umpteenth time I've been told.
Yeah, Joe Franklin was a very interesting show because always there'd be somebody on. Joe would have somebody on that he saw in 1953, and now it was like 1980, and he would have them on, and they were doing a little one-person show where they were singing and dancing in some obscure nightclub in New York or something like that. It was always, he had the most interesting guests on that show.
Okay.
And did we ever have a West Coast equivalent to Joe Pine? The East Coast gets all the coolest shit.
Well, not Joe Pine. Joe Pine's a different guy altogether.
Joe Pine. Oh, okay. I'm thinking of the
closest thing to Joe Pine
was the guy who wanted to be like a Rush Limbaugh type, but was too campy.
Well, he was actually way before Rush Limbaugh, so he wouldn't have wanted to be like Rush Limbaugh. He actually probably was someone who he actually was probably the originator of that character, of the hardcore conservative character on TV. I think everything goes back to Joe Pine. Actually, everybody else is as they say, a pale imitation.
Wally George too.
Yeah, Wally George too.
Yeah, he predated Wally George by a good 10 years.
Well, the Wally George thing was Channel 13 out here gave former Mayor Sam Yorty his own weekly talk show, and they had Wally George as his sidekick. And the trouble was that, and I remember when I first moved out here, I started watching this, probably the late 70s, and I kept looking and saying, how the hell did they ever elect this guy mayor? Because Sam Yorty was like, literally, you talk about Dr. Bernhard Schwartz. He made Dr. Bernhard Schwartz look like, Johnny Depp or something. I mean, he was horrible. And Wally George would carry him through these shows. Was as the sidekick.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where he got the attention, and his own show came out a little bit after that. But that's kind of the same thing as the old, as we talked about the Jerry Springer shows. It started out originally as a serious, current affairs thing, and then one night they had some members of the Jewish Defense League, and I think it was some Nazi sympathizers or whatever on there, and they broke out into a big fight. And after that, Wally George was, well, let's bring on every radical, let's bring on every mud wrestler, let's bring on anybody who's Pistol Pete and Buddha Khan were on that show, for God's sake.
Right. And Ripper Savage.
Ripper Savage,
yeah.
In fact, I remember the Wally George show where they had the guy Dave Metzger and Irv Rubin. And
Irv
Rubin, remember him?
Yeah,
I actually knew him when I worked at KLSX. He was always hanging around with the signs.
Well, that was the moment that put Wally on the map, I think.
And I remember even watching. I think I'd only seen 1 or 2 episodes before, but I'm watching the show, and I noticed that only Irv Rubin has a big glass of water to sip on.
Yeah.
And that glass is full. And so, gee, I wonder what he's going to do with that glass of water.
Mm-hmm.
Sure enough, he dashes it in Metzger's face.
It's like a birthday cake in a wrestling ring. You know what's going to happen with it eventually.
Yeah. Now, Joe Pine, I think you can actually find some stuff on YouTube of him.
Yeah. Well, you can find virtually stuff on any of those guys, but the Joe Pine thing was a very interesting. It's very much worth seeking out if you can find it. It was very different for its time, but he's like the architect of all these guys from Morton Downey on down. But he's the guy. He's the guy that they all that they all were originally compared to.
My favorite line that was said on a Joe Pine show was, Joe Pine was a World War II veteran and lost a leg in the war. And one night he had Frank Zappa on, and he opened the interview saying, well, look at that long hair. I guess that makes you a woman now, doesn't it? And he says, well, with that peg leg, I guess that makes you a table, doesn't it?
Should have said pirate. That would have been a better line. But
no, table is funnier. Yeah. Table is funnier.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell you, if I had to be a jobber, I would want to be, of course, the best one I could possibly be. And my brother Larry and I, we used to debate this all the time. And I gotta say that I would definitely want to be Bengali.
Yes, I was hoping you would say that. El Muchacho de Zacatecas.
Because he was the ultimate of ultimate jobbers. I don't care what anybody else says, he was the worst. And I'd want to be the worst.
I would say one much worse. As far as work rate, or just how many wins he was given?
How many losses he tallied, and his work rate was just, every time I saw him, he was just ripped.
I can name one that was much worse than him. Much worse.
Who's that?
El Negro.
I've never seen
my brother
guys.
used to say too.
I can name one that's worse, even having never seen them. The guy who Marty Jannetty paralyzed because he thought it was a good idea to try to take a flip bump on the rocker dropper and land it on his head.
Oh, Chad Austin.
Chuck Austin.
Yeah.
Charles Austin. Chad Austin was the guy in ECW.
Oh, okay.
That's the thing about the name Austin. Either it's a big high or a real low. One of the two.
True. Oh, yeah. El Negro was the most piss-poor worker that I've ever seen. A nice guy, but a terrible, terrible worker. I remember, sometimes the people he was wrestling would have to motion for him to do a certain move or something like that. The Hangman, who was Lars Anderson for a short time, they go to lock up, and Anderson has, one of his arms high, which obviously meant that El Negro was supposed to go for a wrist lock. And El Negro was just sitting there looking at him, staring. And finally, Anderson just points to his arm. Like, take it, damn it!
You were so nice to El Negro at Cauliflower Alley. If he heard you talking about him right now about this, he would be in tears.
He would have attempted an arm bar.
He would have been on he's on the phone right now to his brother, the Oregon Lumberjack, and he's talking to him. He said, he was so nice.
And they're calling their nephews.
Yeah.
And they're calling their nephews in New Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. Dario Romero was his name. He was he was a very nice man, but he did. Yeah, see, I think if I was going to be, when I was a jobber for a short period of time for Hollywood Heavyweight Wrestling or Cal International, my goal was to be the worst jobber of all time because I wanted to do whatever took the least amount of work. I wanted to take one or two bumps and that was it. And
you had the most fun doing it too.
Well, the thing was, and you remember, because I was awful. That's the whole thing about it was every once in a while, if they needed someone to get beat like in 30 seconds, I put on this mask and I was the lone gunman. That was the character from Dead Horse, Alaska, and I wore
awesome.
a military jacket and this black mask, and I would. That's the night I made your brother laugh so hard. Elena's brother laughed so hard was because we were doing this show at Moguls, and I forgot. I think it was Larry I was wrestling when he threw me out of the ring and into Elena's brother, and I kept screaming into his ear saying, "Oh my God, there's blood in my stool! There's blood in my stool!" And it made him. He's never forgotten that. He's never forgotten that. But the jobbers I saw. Again, if I was going to be one of those guys, my feeling is I'm going to go the Bill Watts route, and that is go in there, get your money, take the least amount of bumps you need to, and get out. And that would be guys like Cowboy Hondo, or so it seems like I consider Bengali actually had some wrestling skill. And there were guys.
He's actually a good worker.
Yeah, and there were guys that I remember seeing in the WWE or the WWF, like Mike Pappas and other guys like that weren't really that bad. But I would want to be someone like Spaceman Frank Hickey. I would want to be someone that just, or one of the various Dr. X's or Executioners or Invaders. I just want to go out there and get hit once or twice and get pinned.
Yeah.
And then have the announcer say, "Oh my God, that may be a new record."
Yeah, and another cool thing about Bengali is I saw him in Tijuana once when he was under the hood as the White Terror, and he and another wrestler tried to stick a wad of Bengay up Tim Flowers' ass.
Wow. Where do you come up with these things? I swear.
Where's the YouTube video of that?
They really did do that. I remember because Tim Flowers was giving Mil Moskowitz a ride to the airport afterwards, and Mil Moskowitz is like, so why are you so mad, Tim? What's wrong? And Flowers is like, those fuckers, they tried to put Ben Gay up my ass. And Moskowitz bursts out laughing.
And you know what?
It's not funny.
I bet as much as that hurt Tim Flowers, it nowhere in any way hurt him any worse than Bengali right now after hearing you run him down.
Well, had he shown me something, anything at some point.
Bengali's there right now going home, I wish someone would stick Ben Gay up my ass. It would hurt less than Kurt Brown running me down on the radio.
And I actually remember seeing Bengali go over once on TV, and it was in a tag match with him and I believe Kim Sung-ho. And I can't remember.
Wow, who'd they beat? Mr. Mexico and Alex Knight? I mean,
well, that's the funniest part. Is one of the people was Raul Reyes, and to this day, I want to know who Raul Reyes pissed off in L.A. because remember he started off getting a really good push.
Yes.
And then at some point they jobbed him to everybody and their brother. I'd love to know the story.
I think Raul Reyes was kind of an irritable guy. From the couple times that I saw him or said hello to him in the mid-'70s at some of the shows, he was not a real personable guy.
Maybe that's why they took away his push.
And I think
maybe supposed to be friendly to the fans.
I think maybe it's because I remember him there were some fans cheering the heels and he was flipping them off.
Yeah.
And he was the face.
Oh, Lord.
And I mean, I think probably one of the problems was Raul Reyes was not taller than the turnbuckle. So I think that may have been, one of those things where no one ever, you must be this tall to wrestle in this ring. It was one of those kind of things. I think he made Pampero Firpo look like Andre the Giant, actually.
Now, Fredo, who would you want to be, Fredo?
What are we talking about?
Jobbers.
I thought you were asking me what TV host I wanted to be.
Oh. Yeah, I knew Fredo falls asleep.
Quit going through your basketball draft magazines.
What happened?
No, he's trying to make me feel better, so he could make it look like he also forgot the Joe Franklin question too. It's just like he's just trying to make me feel good.
I think Fredo would like to be the LA Lakers because they're about the biggest jobbers of all.
Wow. That is the Dodgers. Come on. Man.
I mean, now there's your number one heel in the world today, Frank McCourt. There's a heel. That guy's a manager. I want to take him and put him in as a manager someplace.
He hasn't even paid Vince Scully. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, about Bengali, I saw Bengali pin El Psychedelico.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
He pinned him in the opener in San Bernardino, and I think it was just one of those deals where El Psychedelico was on the way out of town or whatever, and but El Psychedelico was funny because it was one of those things where, talk about your old school stuff, he missed a drop kick and Bengali pinned him.
So there you go.
But do you remember going down, but one of the last times we went down to Tijuana, they were having the matches it was a garage, a big empty garage. They had cleared everything out and they put a ring in there. That was the night that we took
Wally Yamaguchi and Acai
down there. But I remember that as he got older, he wrestled for quite some time. Psychedelico got a little bit of that, pot belly and whatever going, and he was no longer the high flyer. But do you remember after this show, we were all standing out front, and here's Psychedelico comes out with a sport jacket and his mask on, and he's carrying a suitcase, and nobody would give him a ride.
Yeah, that's right. And I wish I remember Pat Howitt said something that was funny, but as he's walking away all by himself with his little briefcase, Howitt saying, "Dude, lesson like the glamorous life after the glamorous years."
Wow. The only thing that would have made that better is as he was walking away, the suitcase opened and everything fell out on the ground. That's the only thing that would have made it better.
And then shake his head, "I'm just too tired to pick it up."
Yeah, exactly.
Probably the worst wrestler I've ever seen.
Yeah, he
pretty awful. The last couple of years.
Well, again, you fall into that area when you're the brother of somebody who's much more famous than you.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard because you're never going to. You look at guys like Terry Funk, how they were able to kind of overcome it, and actually in the long run, be remembered more than the older brother was. But I mean, there's a lot of guys, that Brett Wayne Sawyer, Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer's brother, and those other guys could never ever be able to live up to that.
Yeah. Plus, there's also the second generation, like the son.
Yeah, it's just I mean, the David San Martino's the poster boy for that.
Yeah, Mike Von Erich.
Mike Von Erich, like the ultimate example.
George Goulas, what was his name?
Oh,
George Goulas.
Nick and George Goulas.
Oh, George Goulas, God.
Daddy says so.
Well, it's funny in the Gary Hart book, as Bix will contend to, Goulas actually comes off okay. He comes off actually a lot better than Paul Bosch does, which is interesting because everybody always speaks very fondly of Paul Bosch.
Well, he goes on to say though that it's not as much that he thinks Paul Bosch is a bad person as much as circumstances puts them at odds. Yeah,
but he doesn't. But he also doesn't spare the fact of saying that while everybody else in Texas was very serious and did it that if it wasn't Bosch didn't want to put in Big John Studd as Big John Studd, he figured because he had just come down from the WWF as the Executioner, you had to put him in a mask.
Right.
As Captain USA, or he took the one guy, the Bushman, that Gary Hart was managing, and turned him into Moon Man.
Oh yes.
Yeah, he said that it was right after, or maybe it wasn't right after the moon landing, but he tried to push him as an actual man from the moon.
Yeah, exactly. No, it sounds like actually no. There's nothing. There's not like there's anything wrong with Paul Bosch. It sounds like actually he and Mike LaBelle would have had a great time together, putting some of these things together.
But you're right. He did. He said. I think he said part of it was probably because he never worked for Goulas, but the way he talked, it seemed like the Goulas was far preferable to the Welches.
Yeah, I mean, he is not a big fan of Jerry Jarrett or any of those guys down there at all.
And if he didn't work for Goulas, because, I mean, everybody with one exception, everybody I know who worked for George Goulas just said it was the most, one of the least pleasant people to work with.
Who was the one exception?
Billy Anderson. Billy loved Nick.
Billy loved everybody. Come on.
Wow.
And then again, Billy loves Mike LaBelle too. So
yeah, Billy loves everybody.
He's a very open-minded person. I guess that's the way to put it. But I've never heard anybody else put over either of those promoters. Well, and Nick Goulas sounds like he knew what he was doing as far as keeping his own ship sailing up until he started pushing his son George as the big thing, and that's when everything went to hell.
I never really thought about it this way before, but it does seem strange that a guy who was such a notorious bad payoff guy to the point where he clearly had an eye on his pocket in the business, that he was pushing his son so much to the detriment to the promotion, so that it was killing his town.
Well, it's funny how some people just have a blind spot to that. I mean, it's Thursday night. I mean, what's the biggest blind spot that there is in wrestling? It's Impact Wrestling, and how Dixie Carter looks at, I can't even bear myself to say his name. What's his name? Vince Russo, yeah. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Is sometimes they just figure there's just no way that they can be wrong on something, and he probably thought, well, this he has it. I know he has it. I know my son can do this. And I don't think even I know people who've talked to Goulas, the son didn't even kind of feel that he had the ability to do it. Wow. It was kind of like one of those things where Mike Von Erich, actually even worse, Chris Von Erich, being pushed into wrestling. When you're really not
wasn't really pushed in though.
Chris Von Erich?
Chris, from Gary Hart's book, it seems like he kind of he loved wrestling and he really wanted to, but couldn't really do it.
Well, I think my feeling there is that and this is just what I've pieced together, is that there was never any kind of plan for Chris Von Erich to go into wrestling. that if some of his brothers hadn't died, I don't think he would have gone into it. Because I remember in one of those great propaganda videos they used to do on the Von Erich family, and Fritz would be there, and he would say things like, well, David and Kerry are going to be world champions one day, and Kevin's going to be this, and then Mike's going to be this, and then he says, and Chris has a great future in promotion.
Well, from what I remember hearing is that Mike wasn't that gung-ho to get into the business, but Chris badly wanted to and was bitterly disappointed that he just didn't have neither the size or the skill or anything.
Right.
Where I heard Mike was kind of like not that up for it.
Yeah, well, Mike Von Erich is one of like the saddest stories in wrestling.
Yeah,
I mean,
he didn't look like a wrestler either. So I mean, probably
no, he didn't. And neither one of those boys did. And I mean, again, you were living up to the reputation of the other three brothers. And
well, with Mike, it was especially bad because they really did push him hard as David's replacement when David died. I mean, he started a few months before that. I mean, if you watch the show they did right after David died, the special.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's really uncomfortable.
Fritz is like, well, I tell you what, we got Mike. He looks just like David.
Yes.
Swear to God, he actually says.
When they're sitting out in the backyard or something like that, wasn't it? Oh, man,
it looks just like David.
Even back then, everybody was so uneasy watching that.
That is just...
Yeah, I mean, and then they shoved him out.
And then when he got sick.
Yeah, then he got sick, and then that horrible footage of them when they took him to the Cotton Bowl and they had him in the back of the car and they were driving around, and he looked like death.
Yeah. I think they also did a press conference with him too before that.
I remember the press conference very well, and Fritz was the only one who looked really upbeat and happy in that press conference. Just like, I see money coming in.
Wow.
Yeah. We always remember, Dan, how was it that Dr. Jerry Graham summed up Fritz Von Erich?
Oh, he said, nice guy, killed half his sons, but nice guy. Do you know also in the Gary Hart book, Kurt, they talk about the rumor of Gino Hernandez being, Hart addresses about being Paul Bosch's son.
In fact, I remember Carl Stern addressing it, and Carl Stern very sternly saying Gary Hart confirmed that he's not his son, but I've heard everybody and their brothers say elsewise.
Yeah, I mean, he said something like, I knew all of the, Paul had women on the side, and I knew all of them, and none of them were Gino's mother. I guess
look at the picture of Paul Bosch when...
Right, I was
look at a picture of Paul Bosch when he was 20.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned to you, I saw a ton of those pictures recently when I was looking at that scrapbook that he had that he had sent to the library here, and I mean, in some pictures it really is uncanny. I wouldn't, it's not all the time. I mean, but there's certainly a strong resemblance.
Well, the first time I ever heard about it was Meltzer had kind of jumped the gun when Gino Hernandez died and printed that Gino was Paul Bosch's actual son.
Yeah. And
that's how Dave Meltzer got to know Paul Bosch, because Paul Bosch called him on the phone and chewed him out, but they ended up becoming really good friends over it. But I remember when I read that, I remember my friend Lloyd Lee and I were talking on the phone. We're saying, "Is Dave Meltzer nuts? Where did he get this stuff about Paul Bosch, being the father?" And then Lloyd called me the very next day and said, "Kurt, you're not going to believe this. I went to see the doc and I told him Gino Hernandez died." And he says, "Oh, Paul Bosch's kid." He said, "What?" He said, "Oh, Paul Bosch was the happiest man when Luis Hernandez went out of town, because he was banging the wife right and left, and he had his son."
Wow. I mean, at least according to Gary Hart, though, the father was that Gino's mom was with the father before Luis Hernandez.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I have to say for that is Gary Hart seemed to carry a torch for Gino Hernandez, and maybe it's true. Maybe it's true, but maybe he's also trying to kind of be protective of of Gino Hernandez, because he had I remember that one Von Erich documentary, not the one WWE put out.
No, I think it was the WWE DVD.
Oh, was it?
It says that he has, it might have been both even, where he says that, he had his home office or whatever, where he had pictures up of, all of the wrestlers he managed, except for Gino, because he just couldn't bear to look at it.
Yeah.
He started crying every time he looked at Gino's picture.
Exactly. It sounded like he very much cared and loved Gino Hernandez, and I wonder if it's more being protective of him. And if it's true, if Paul Bosch was his father, that must really fucking hurt. As much as Bosch did take care of him, it would be weird to have your own father not say, "Hey, this is my son." I don't know. Who knows?
Wow.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that always is floating around, and it was interesting because I think that was one of the first times I'd ever see anybody address it in print.
Yes.
And on a related note, he also, pretty much, he talks about the Jerry Jarrett parentage rumors.
Oh yeah.
Says that he believes them. That it, who was it? Lester Welch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Lester Welch is his father.
Really? Wait.
Jerry Jarrett's father. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that right there is one of the
that's another one of those.
That whole lineage right there is to keep all those Welches and Fullers and
Fields
and everybody all straight. That's really hard. That's a job in itself to do.
True.
But no, it's funny because I agree with you. I think that Gary Hart, like anybody, is protective of certain guys, and I think Gino Hernandez and Bruiser Brody, he felt a great closeness to both of them, and the Von Erich boys too, I think.
Yep.
I mean, I can understand where he himself says in the beginning of the book that just a few years earlier he would never have written this book because of coming out of kayfabe like he did. He would really have found it to be a difficult thing to do. But I think those kind of habits die hard sometimes, and especially if you like someone and wanted to feel like you just wanted to protect them that way, that you would do something like that. Because we know the Von Erich boys weren't angels. We know Gino was never an angel, and Brody to some extent wasn't an angel. Yeah, but still, I think it's one of those things where everybody has a fucked up friend. Everybody has somebody that, everybody else goes, "Why do you hang around with that guy?" And he goes, "I don't know. I like him. He's a good guy. He means well." That's always the line you always hear. He means well. And I think that's one of the things that's very interesting about the book is that it's obvious in certain places that Gary Hart does feel a great affinity for the boys and for certain guys just by the names. He always called Brody Bruise, and he called Abdul the Butcher Butchie, and he had all these little names for him and everything. And I can see where you're at the end of your career, and unfortunately he had no idea he was close to the end of his life. That there's a tendency, especially for those that are gone, to want to kind of say, well, if I say something here or whatever, maybe that'll put some of this stuff to rest, and they can rest easy. But it's just one of those things. I'm amazed at just the I mean, first of all, it's 450 pages, single spaced. Whoa.
And it is not large type either.
And it's not large type at all. And there's all these, and he, instead of printing pictures like in the middle or whatever, he has pictures and flyers and lineup cards all throughout this thing.
And there's some great pictures there.
And what I love about the book also is just besides the fact that I always like to listen to how certain guys booked and billed people, and I also found it probably one of the better books talking about the payoffs. And how people were paid and how that worked.
The details and the percentage and everything. Although in fairness, past a certain point in the book, he's clearly inflating his payoffs.
Yeah.
Once he goes back to Georgia with Kabuki.
Yeah.
And he's saying he's making $2,000 a weekend just for Georgia, moonlighting in Georgia. I can't believe that.
Yeah, I mean there are some leaps of faith there, but also I would say to people who they get a book and they go like, oh God, how many chapters do I have to go through about them walking to school in the snow every day? Before we get to the actual wrestling portion. Like by page 3, you're into the wrestling, and it stays that way. I mean, it just is. It's unbelievable.
So there's not every other chapter saying that Jesus Christ is your personal savior.
No, not at all. I mean, he spends a lot of time talking about Jim Barnett, about his aborted runs in the WWF, Texas,
both
Georgia. Yeah, both of them. Right? And he was there during the dying days of the Amarillo office too, and he talks about those. I mean, it was very interesting. It's like a quantum leap travel through the history of professional wrestling. You really get
around, and really, anyone, whether it's here or listening or whatever, if you don't have it, get it while you still can.
It's one of the best books.
I definitely want to get it.
It's one of the best books on wrestling. I would put it in the top 5 easily.
This and Bret Hart's are my favorite.
Yeah.
I would say they're the best. I mean, they're fantastic. I find myself rereading parts of them a lot.
Yeah, exactly. As the biographies go, there's some other books I would also include in there that are more historical overviews or whatever. But I would say the Bret Hart one, this one, and I just for the fact that it was one of the first ones I read, and very early on, the Dynamite Kid one, I thought was really interesting also.
Yeah, I remember enjoying the Dynamite Kid one when it came out too, and it came out on the heels of the Mick Foley book. Mick Foley really put the wrestling literature on the map, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed Roddy Piper's book, too.
Piper's book
a fun read.
The Piper's book was a lot of fun. I mean, again, that's, God bless you, Roddy. There's some holes there. But still, in general, there's a lot of really, I mean, there's very few wrestling books that, only like 2 or 3 I can think of, that were a complete waste of time. Most of them, even if they're not a great book, there might be 5 pages in there that just are really, really interesting.
You must have read Tito Santana's book then.
I read Tito's book. And Tito, I think, I know that he at least in the past has had was he a barber or a hairdresser or whatever?
He owned a hair salon.
Yeah, I think he was under the dryer a little too long on some of these things because
I think he still lost it, actually.
Yeah, my favorite one is when he's talking about watching the Andre the Giant Hulk Hogan match at WrestleMania, and turning and talking to Bobby Heenan about it. And if I'm correct, wasn't Bobby Heenan at ringside during that match?
Exactly.
He was, yeah.
But no, I'll tell you that the 2 dirt worst books that I've ever. Well, the Goldust book is bad, but it's not really. It's a different kind of bad. It's not really his fault. We've talked about that before. But the 2 worst ones was the first Vince Russo book. The first Vince Russo book was so bad, I wouldn't even touch the second book.
I'm surprised you touched the first one.
Well, I was interested, and then I started reading it, and it was just like, this is horse shit all the way through. And the other one was the Sheik Adnan Al-Kaisi book.
Oh, the one with him being the bodyguard of the Shah and all that, or was it the...
Well, yeah, and I think he does... I think he does. I think throughout the book, I think he slams Andre the Giant and hits a home run for a little boy in Yankee Stadium. I mean, he does everything.
The big thing I didn't read it, but the big thing was I think that he grew up with Saddam or something.
Oh yeah, I mean
Saddam Hussein. That's who.
The timeline is so screwy. You'd have to be Doctor Who to complete half that stuff.
Maybe that's his explanation.
It's all. I mean, because the Zbyszko book was not great, but again, to me, the thing that I loved about it was how Bruno was teaching Zbyszko what he should be making. And having that, and he talked about how one time he asked for a certain amount down to the penny or whatever it was, and how Monsoon was the payoff guy that night, and sat there and put the money out in front of him, including stacking the coins. That he wanted, and Monsoon was laughing because he just thought that was the funniest thing in the world.
Now, I never saw the Zbyszko book, but the one thing I remember is I knew a lot of people who really liked Larry Zbyszko and were really upset when they read the book because I guess they were expecting more But a lot of them were saying, God, I love Zbyszko, but don't waste your money on this.
Well, I think the thing with Zbyszko's book is a lot like watching Zbyszko wrestle. Yeah. That is, you got to be prepared for him to jump out of the ring for 20 minutes and wander around. And then he gets
he'll shut up to the crowd for all that
Yeah, and
time.
then he gets into the ring, and then there's a really good 2 minutes, and then he jumps out again. And that's kind of what it is with the book. You know, there's a like 20 minutes of nothing, and then there'll be a couple really good pages there. Though, when we met him at Wrestle Reunion a couple of years ago, he was a really nice guy.
Yeah, really nice.
Well, you see, Dan, it's a human game of chess.
you want to get a good detailed book from Larry Zbyszko, have him write it about golf. That's what you need to do if you want him to do.
One wrestling book that isn't really necessarily that good, but that I still kind of like parts of, is the Missing Link book.
Yeah.
It becomes really clear, especially if you know the story behind it, that the story, what happened was that Greg Oliver's wife ended up ghostwriting it for him.
Yeah.
And he was just gone in terms of memory and just very erratic. And
in fact, I never read the book, but I read. Was it her who wrote an obituary about him?
Yeah, I think so.
That was fascinating. That read alone was fascinating.
Do you know?
But there's still wrestling-wise, the earlier parts of his career are very interesting. It just kind of falls off a cliff.
Yeah,
later on. Once he gets a bad drug habit.
Yeah, that's obviously what what messed him up and what messed the book up a lot.
So there's the weird part though, where he claims to have been in the hospital for a marijuana overdose.
Yeah. Do you remember? I don't remember.
Give him his marijuana pills.
It was a long time ago when the book came out a long time ago, but it's been a long time since I've read it. But I always remember, when they finally brought him into the WWF, I thought, this is perfect. The Missing Link should be in the WWF. He and Hogan, that's going to be perfect. And I forgot, and maybe Bix, but I forgot, something happened. And all of a sudden I remember on like the Monday night show, they showed a match where the Link wrestled Orndorff in like Boston.
Yeah, that's what I think.
And he did the job, and then that was like the end of the Link.
There was something about him being angry, irrationally angry.
Yeah.
And one thing I find really interesting about that book, and I believe it's that this is the case, is that it was his quest that someone had gotten it in his head that he could maybe eventually be NWA champion.
Yeah.
I guess because it's Dewey Robertson, he was just, a clean-cut.
That's right. I remember that. That. You're right.
He traveled more than he should have, even going to places like Kansas City where he wasn't going to make any money, because he thought that it would help him get towards an NWA title when he probably could have stayed, in Toronto for his whole career, made solid money, occasionally, doing shots wherever else, and, things.
And once again, because it all comes around in a big circle, who was the manager of the Missing Link in Mid-South? Dark Journey.
It
all comes back to Dark Journey.
So
all comes around to Dark Journey.
Let's quote Jeff Walton. To paraphrase Jeff Walton, all roads lead to Dark Journey.
Because I still have that great picture, that one that they used to sell in the UWF where they were, the Missing Link, and they were out in some sort of wooded area, and it's the Missing Link and Dark Journey standing there in a leopard bikini.
That was like the most stunning picture I have ever seen of her.
Exactly.
I mean, that would floor anybody.
I can just imagine those Southerners driving through there going, I don't know, should we shoot them? It looks like it's not real. I don't know.
Wait, there's Kamala over there. Maybe he'll talk to us.
One of my favorite videos of all time, the Jerry Lawler Kamala video. God, that's
I remember
wonderful.
when that Kamala video came out. That was when the Doc lived in the Imperial Hotel in downtown L.A. that was anything but Imperial. And if we came knocking at the door, he'd ask, are there any ladies present? And if there were, he'd put on his robe. If there wasn't, he would take a towel and tuck it under his tummy like an Indian cloth and open the door. And that was right around the time the Kamala video came out, and we thought, okay, we should make a Dr. Jerry Graham video along the same lines, only see him stalking through the halls of the Imperial Hotel with a bottle in his hand and say, Jerry Graham, seen in his natural habitat.
Jerry Graham, 6 feet, 1 inch tall. Jerry Graham, 450 pounds.
Doc Mala. You know,
thousands of Hindu squats.
I was listening to the Wrestling Observer podcast today, and the Doc's name came up during it.
No way.
Yeah, well, they were basically talking about how there were no tag teams left anymore in any way, shape, or form, and also about how guys have to look a certain way. And they said, who is Vince's favorite wrestler of all time? And they said Dr. Jerry Graham, and they said he would never hire him now because he would have been too fat.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. But he was the one who McMahon has admitted it himself. The Doc was the one that made him want to live wrestling.
I swear if Vince McMahon would ever sit down with someone and do an interview talking about Dr. Jerry Graham, it would be probably one of the most freaking interesting interviews of all time, because I guarantee he would drop all the pretenses, all the stuff that he does and everything, and he would become like a fan again, just to be able to talk about Dr. Jerry Graham.
It's true. Yeah, he would just go. Yeah, you're right. He would drop it all. He would not be Vince McMahon. He would be 14-year-old Vince McMahon, wrestling fan again, born again. I remember the Doc used to tell us, "Oh yeah, I bought McMahon his first set of weights and I bleached his hair," and we're thinking, "Yeah, I bet you did, Doc, yeah." And then years later, I read an interview where McMahon says, "Oh yeah, he took me out one night and bleached my hair and pissed my dad off really bad."
Yeah.
And we're going, "No way!" Just when the Doc says the strangest thing, it ends up being, true.
God damn it! I love my hair. Look at that. It's wonderful. Blonde that way.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to sign off another episode of Slam and Stan. Anybody who has held on this whole 90 minutes, if you want to contact us, you can contact us at Liger, Lyger, at AOL.com. And we now have a new line of T-shirts coming out, the I Hate Your Father T-shirts. So look for those. They'll be available really, really soon. And want to thank the whole crew, Dan Farron, Ryan Doyle, the Bixie Demon, and the Wheelman of Slam and Stan, Alfredo Esparza, who makes this thing possible. And
is Fredo still there? Fredo, are you still there?
I got to push the button. Don't worry.
Oh, I was going to say.
We'd have to be on all night if he wasn't there. It would be the forever Slam and Stan episode.
You guys wouldn't remember to push the button or anything.
Yeah, that happened once before, didn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, I would have never done something like that, would I?
That's basically all I do. I just press the button and then I'm done. I'm like, okay, guys, I've had it.
He makes it sound so easy, man. He makes it sound so easy. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you're strolling down... Wow, is that a car wreck?
Sounds like a group of people out there.
Fireworks are happening late in July, aren't they?
Actually, if you're walking down... Oh, I wanted... I actually had a request before you did that.
Yes, what's that?
You were talking about the good Dr. Jerry Graham and things that he has said that must be true. I wanted to hear his theory on how sparking an owl affects the brain before you talk about self-powder.
That's
I can never get enough of that.
That's a better way to end this episode.
Alrighty then.
Oh, yes, yes. It all happened upon a Christmas Eve when we went up to visit Dr. Jerry Graham, bring him a little holiday cheer. When Tom Hankins, who was wrestling his son Steel Graham, was leaving just as we were coming and said, "Yeah, just smoke 6 joints with the doc." So we went up to the doc's hotel room, opened it up, and could smell that sweet scent of weed. And the doc just said, yeah, Steel and that dope. What the hell?
It's on the road right now.
Don't mind me. I'm just trying to jump out the window. That's all.
Are you playing Superman again?
Oh, for God's sake, push the button, Fredo. No.
So we look at the doc, and he said, now, I know Steve Cooley must be invading the lines. He's still trying to stamp out medicinal marijuana, the rat bastard. But the doc said, yeah, Charlie, as he calls Tom, is here with that dope. The way it works is the left hemisphere of the brain short-circuits the right hemisphere short-circuits the left hemisphere, and bing! You're there. Sweet dreams, ladies and gentlemen.
Don't jump.